So I'm really excited about this tutorial because I'm going to use DeepSeek to generate source content that I feed into NotebookLM and ultimately generate a podcast on YouTube. And so there will be some exciting findings I'll reveal at the end, or at least some lessons learned that we can use for generating future podcasts. All right, so let's get started. Let's see how we can actually install and run DeepSeek. So I'm on olama.com and I'm seeing some different sizes. So we have some different sizes. So I think I'm going to try this 14B. It's 9 gigs. It'll take a while to download, but it looks like this is one of the Quinn models. So I'm just going to take that and I'm going to go to my terminal and then enter that in. This will take a while. But for the next step, let's actually enter in a script to generate the source that we're going to use for a NotebookLM generated podcast. So in this case, I'm going to ask it to create valuable tips on how to create a engaging podcast and then highlight any sort of linguistic features that it's using. So let's see what it gives us. So it's interesting. It has a little think here. So it's in a thinking phase. All right. So it repeats the question that I ask it. Then it goes through its reasoning. So it says first, structure is important. Then it goes into the middle sections and then the end sections on how to do this. And then it begins to focus on linguistic features, tone of voice, dialogue, descriptions, repetition. So yeah, it's going through a whole list of things in its thinking phase using storytelling techniques. I'm actually impressed with how much it's coming up with during its thinking phase. So now after the think, it's going through on the actual answer. So it talks about structure, linguistic features. It lists them all out, pacing and rhythm, tone of voice, dialogue, how to, engagement techniques. So yeah, I think it gives us enough. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this into NotebookLM and see what kind of podcast it generates before we move to the next step. Okay. Our next step is to create the podcast using NotebookLM. So I'm going to create a new notebook. Then I'm going to go to copy text and just paste in the text that we got out of DeepSeek. So I'm starting with the question, putting in the whole thinking process, and then the final result. And what we'll do is we're going to now customize that. And I just paste this into NotebookLM as part of its customized prompt and start to generate. Now this can take a little while, so we'll just have to wait and then see what comes out. So it is ready. So let's see, it generated 15 minutes podcast from that. So then let's take a little bit of a look.
Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive. And today we're going to get into some really interesting stuff about what makes a great podcast script.
Okay, so yeah, it sounds like it's got the introduction. The next step, have to heavily edit this thing. 15 minutes is way too long, and it probably has a lot of redundancy in it. So that'll be the next step. All right, so we've already generated the NotebookLM podcast, so now it's time to go through editing. So what I do is I use Descript. So I just create a new project. This is going to be an audio project. And just upload the file. And then I will import the WAV file that we got from NotebookLM. Now this will ask for speakers. So I know there's going to be 2 speakers. It's good to go ahead and detect these. Okay, now it goes into asking to identify speakers.
Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive.
So, and I always just call the male Adam and go to next.
Well, it's kind of like a...
And call her Eve. Then we go next, and that's it. We're done naming the speakers. Next, I'll show you how we can edit this podcast using Descript. Now, in Descript, we can go through and just remove the words we don't want. If I don't want I can remove it, remove like, and get rid of some of these extra exchanges we don't need. So that's just an example of how the editing is done. So it's super easy. It just takes a bit of work to get it done. Okay, so I've cut this down to 8 minutes and 50 seconds. I actually have a little more than I expected. It's interesting because by feeding these really structured sources in, it seems like NotebookLM is not meandering so much, and it actually comes up with more onto the point. So I actually like that. Typically when I feed a research paper in, what I'll find is NotebookLM will spend the first 5 minutes really talking about their research paper, and then another 5 to 10 minutes just going all over the place. So I think we can actually see by feeding in highly structured data that we get from DeepSeek into the podcast will actually result in, I think, more engaging content. So now that we actually have a base podcast edited, what we need to do is add chapters. And so why we want to do this is we'll see later, but this is going to be used within the Gamma app to actually generate the visuals we have for the podcast. But we can just do the chapters right here inside of Descript. I'll let it just auto-generate, tell me what it thinks the chapters are. That is that's a lot of things. I don't want that. Generally, I want to have no more than 8. So let me just go back and give it maybe, let's try 7 of these. Give me the top 7. All right. So let's just take this and we can add some timestamps to that. And I lost that. So I'm going to go ahead and add these chapters. We're going to add 7 chapters. Then I'm going to add them to the script. So what that does is it goes ahead and puts them in. So we'll see like smooth transitions. And this is what we're going to use to feed into Gamma app so that we can actually generate the visuals for the podcast. So we've already segmented it. And then I can just add the timestamps, and this will give me an idea when I'm editing as to where to put the markers. So that's the final step is to just publish this. I do private, but I can just go ahead and publish that for private access, and then I'll proceed to just download that. And then that will go to a download section. And that's basically all we need to do. Okay, so next we need to generate the presentation for the podcast. So we're going to be using Gamma app for this. So let's create new. Then we will paste in the text, and the text is just going to be the script that we generated from Descript. And remember, we also added in all of the sectioning for that. You'll see why that's important in a second. So let's go ahead and configure. We're going to go card by card, detailed. And then I'm going to ask it to split for me. Now, you notice it split it by the subtitles that have already been done. So that's why that's important. So we get 14 titles. Let's continue. Now we can choose a theme. I think I'll choose this one. That's good. Let me just go ahead and generate that. And let's see what we get. So we got some images. It's looking pretty good so far. Points of structure, nice. Talks about smooth transitions. All right, good. Engaging language techniques, powered pacing. Yeah, it all looks pretty, it's looking good. And it does the art of storytelling, enhancing. Okay. So this, I think this is going to be usable. Yep, it all looks good. So what I'm going to do is import this into the Davinci Resolve and actually edit it into a podcast. So just to see how this works, we want to, we're going to need to go through and download every image. So we'll just need to export that. And then I'll finish that up, and then we'll move on to the next step. Okay, so we're finally at the editing stage. So this is the last piece of the puzzle. So I'm just going to give you an idea of how this is actually put together. So right now I already have the intro done. So I sprint to show the title, and then play a little bit of music, and then move on to the actual episode contents. So I've already put that together. I'll show you how to do how I do the rest of this. So this crafting engaging podcast scripts is what I downloaded from Descript. So I'm just going to put that right after the intro music. And then I've already labeled these in order. So generally it's just going to be, we're going to start to put these in order like this. We'll obviously have to go through and actually size them correctly, but basically that's the first step. So I'm just going to go ahead and finish this. So I finished putting in all of the clips, and this was really easy because we already had the structure defined and then used Gamma app to generate the assets for that. So you can see I've already put in all of these, and then I put in the markers, which are going to be used for chapters. All I need to do is add in the chapter names. So this is crafting the intro, for example, and I think we're done with that part of it. So next, we want to create a nice transition effect between the assets. So I'm going to use a package I have from Motion VFX, and I will show you how that works. It's just basically dropping in like this, and then you can have a look.
And speaking of grabbing attention, the source talks about that hook. And
So I'm going to do that for every asset we have just to create a nice transition. And now the final piece is to publish this to YouTube. So that's basically all it took. So it was pretty easy. Then one of the nice things about Davinci Resolve is we can upload it straight to YouTube. So I can just put the description in here. Looks good. I can do chapters for markers. That'll add that. I can upload the thumbnail. Okay, so I'm going to upload my thumbnail here. And we are done. I will go ahead and make that public. Why not? Just call this DeepSeek video. Add to render queue. And then let's start rendering it. And then after it finishes rendering, it will upload. And so that's finished rendering, and now it's uploading to YouTube. And it's done. So we can just go here and check. We can see there's the video. So that is how you do a video end to end with starting out with DeepSeek to generate some data, going through the whole process of generating the script and the presentation, ultimately editing it, and then putting it up on YouTube. So there is one really important thing that I learned from this exercise, because this is just an experiment, but to pre-process there's research data into something very structured prior to feeding it into NotebookLM will result in, I think, a lot better results and much easier editing during the audio process. So definitely one valuable lesson learned in this experiment. And so I hope you enjoyed watching, and we all learned something together. So that was definitely a win. All right. Well, thank you and good night.